I think we can say it now with great confidence that our criminal justice system has collapsed. And this was summarized by Judge Madlanga earlier this week. And, I try as much as I can not to watch the commission. But when I saw the statement through somebody's TikTok account and I listened to what he said, I realized that him as a judge has also realized what has happened here. And this is the statement that he made. He said, if the people who are in charge of fighting organized crime are afraid to disclose names of people who are involved in organized crime, then who will confront organized crime? So, just to paraphrase, what he's saying is if you are a policeman and you are afraid of criminals, so then who will protect the citizens from criminals? It's a very simple question, but very loaded. Because what has happened at the Madlanga Commission is that we've had generals. I'm going to mention two generals that have been at the Madlanga Commission. So it's General Sibiya and Major General Shibiri. So let me start with their position. So Shibiri is a suspended head of organized crime. So he's the head of the organized crime unit. Okay. And Sibiya was a deputy national commissioner and the head of the Hawks in Gauteng. So these are people who hold very, very strong and influential positions in law enforcement. So these are generals, Major General Shibiri. If you're a major general and you're afraid to name criminals, you're afraid to name people that are involved in organized crime. So what chance do we stand as citizens? What chance do you stand as a man or a woman trying to protect their family? If a head of crime intelligence unit is afraid or scared to mention names of people that are involved in organized crime, and you're in charge of that unit, your job is to dismantle any form of criminal syndicate, any form of organized crime syndicate. Your job is to break them down, arrest them, collect information, prosecute them, and put in prison. But you are afraid of them. There's only one answer that I can come up with. You've put yourself in that position because you are for sale. You want to be seen at the Gucci store buying luxury clothes. You've put yourself in that position because you didn't deserve that position to start with. So you find people that are in very high positions in our law enforcement and criminal justice system, and they are afraid to mention names of criminals or people that are known to be criminals. That's what we have in the country at the moment. Hence, if you watch all my videos, I keep repeating this. We don't have law enforcement in the country. Our criminal justice system has collapsed. It has collapsed because we've allowed people to hold positions they don't deserve. If you want to be in law enforcement, it means that you have to be beyond reproach. You have to have morals. You have to have the highest level of morality because you are the law. We look at you, we look upon you and say, listen, somebody broke into my house, please help. You're supposed to investigate, arrest, prosecute, and sentence. But the whole system is broken because people have allowed themselves to be bought, to be for sale, and to be involved in the crime itself. The crime they're supposed to be stopping, the crime they're supposed to be investigating, and taking down those criminals as harshly as possible. So the judge is asking a question. It's a very serious question. And what he's asking is, if you guys are the top cops, if you guys are sitting in very high offices when it comes to delivering justice to citizens of this country, if you guys are scared of the same criminals, what does it mean for us as citizens? What does it mean for South Africa as a country? If people that are supposed to stop the criminals are afraid of the criminals. You have all the resources as a head of crime intelligence, all the protection, all the resources. You can pick up a phone and open an investigation into a suspected crime syndicate. But you are afraid of those people. You are afraid to mention their names publicly because you work with them. because you've allowed yourself to be used. You've allowed yourself to be turned from a law enforcer into a criminal because you are greedy. So just think about this situation a little bit. And I put a list of what I believe is, law enforcement structures or our criminal justice system. So we've got policemen, you've got investigators, you've got prosecutors, you've got magistrates, and you've got judges. If you're a policeman and you find yourself in a position where you are afraid to arrest a criminal, you are afraid to charge after a criminal, you are afraid to hold a criminal to account, just leave the job, okay? It is not for you. Because if you're a policeman, it means that what you are doing is a calling. The minute that you have doubts about who to arrest and who not to arrest, the minute you are afraid to execute your duties, step down. Just resign and find another job. I don't know, find a job at the post office. Because if you're a policeman, it means that you must be prepared to confront criminals. You must be prepared to confront criminals and come up on top. You're supposed to confront them, arrest them, and make sure that they account for their crimes. That is your job. The minute you cannot execute that job, step down, resign, find another job. Investigators. If you are if you are responsible for doing investigations in the South African Police Service and you find yourself afraid to investigate somebody, afraid to confront crime, afraid to ask for somebody's files, it is not for you. If you're in law enforcement and your job is to investigate, you have to investigate without fear or favor. You need to be able to be diligent in your job. The minute you cannot execute that job, step down. The minute you cannot do your investigative work, it is over. It is over. Hand over your files to somebody else who can do without fear or favor. Prosecutors, a very, very important part of our criminal justice system. If you're a prosecutor and you find yourself getting influenced by payments, you find yourself getting influenced by criminals to drive the case in a certain direction. If you find yourself in that position, step down, quit, resign, find another job. I don't know, work at the bank or something, because bringing justice to South African citizens, it is not for you. These are not the kind of positions that you take because you're looking for a job. These are the kind of positions you take because you believe in justice. You believe in a society where if you commit a crime, you pay for it. And then your job as a prosecutor is to collect all the information possible to make sure this person is prosecuted and goes to prison and pays the price. The minute you're not able to do that job, quit. Just leave it alone because it is not for you. It is not your calling. Find another job. Find your job, find a job in a factory where you are packing boxes. Because prosecuting people is not for you. Because you prosecute people with conditions. The minute you find yourself in a position where you are getting influenced on how you drive the case, quit. Leave it. It's not for you. Let somebody come in with the courage and the level of morality that is required to carry out the duties. I think about magistrates. So you find people that are sitting at the top of law enforcement. Some even, like for example, in Sibia's case, a deputy national commissioner, head of the Hawks in Gauteng. These people have gotten themselves in a position where they are now cornered. They cannot even name criminals. Imagine you're a magistrate, a local magistrate. If you find yourself unable to sentence people based on the crimes they've committed, if you find yourself conflicted because there's influence, if you find yourself afraid to sentence people appropriately because you're worried about the consequences, don't do it. Being in law enforcement and the justice system is not for you. It is not your calling. Let it go and let somebody with guts and the right ethics carry out and give out those sentences. Because that is the problem we have. If you find people at the top of the chain, at the top of law enforcement when it comes to investigations and crime intelligence and organized crime and SAPS and being commissioner, deputy commissioner, and you are afraid of criminals. You are scared that if you mention somebody's name, you're gonna be unsafe. If you are that person at the top, what about a constable or a normal policeman who's just supposed to carry out their duties? It means that the whole system is gone. Law enforcement is finished. There will be no justice in this country. It means that crimes are committed on a daily basis, but you are not able to find those criminals because you are afraid of them. You are not able to confront them, which is your job. A policeman's job is to confront crime. He hates crime. He cannot stand crime. He despises people that are involved in crime. He should never be afraid of them. The minute you find yourself in that position where you're afraid of criminals and you are in law enforcement, just stop it. Okay? Stop it. Cash in your pension and open a business, selling shoes or something. Because law enforcement is not for you. If you're in law enforcement, it means that you have to confront crime and confront criminals because you can't stand them. And when you get an opportunity to name them, you name them without hesitation. The minute you find yourself in a position where you worry about your own safety, you are worried about your own safety, and you are at the top of crime intelligence. You're at the top of dealing with crime, organized crime, and you are afraid to name names. This is not for you. This is not your job. Just quit. You should have quit 30 years ago. Because being a policeman, being in law enforcement, it is your daily duty to confront criminals. That's what you do. You are in that job to find criminals and arrest them and pin them down and show them who's boss. The minute you are afraid of them, what about us as citizens? What about me and my family? What about people who run businesses? What about us who drive on these highways and roads? What about when you have kids and people get kidnapped? What about us? When people at the top of law enforcement in the country are afraid of criminals, scared to mention their names. You are worried about your own safety while you're supposed to provide safety for the rest of the country, for all of us, but you're afraid of criminals. You cannot mention their names. You can't even whisper their name because you're afraid that they're going to come after you. You put yourself in that position. And the minute you were given an option to be part of that crime world or be part of the crime prevention world, you should have quit because it's never supposed to be a multiple choice option. If you're in law enforcement, your job is to go after criminals. Full stop. There's no other option. And I think about our judges, whether they're the constitutional court or any high court. If you find yourself as a judge worried about, what could happen to you if you sentence a person in a certain way, or if you grant bail or no bail, the minute you find yourself conflicted like that, it is not for you. Because if you work for the justice system of a country, your job is to execute justice. Your job is to make sure that the victims of that crime get justice and the perpetrator goes to prison. Simple. And then you have studied the law. You know exactly what sentence is appropriate for what crime. Your job is to execute those things. Your job is to make sure that the crime the person has committed goes with the sentence. Your job is to make sure that you are diligent in following the law and making sure that there is justice in this world. The minute you find yourself conflicted, the minute you find yourself being bought and having transactions go through your account to make sure that some people get bails and some don't, and looking the other way when crime is being committed, it is not for you. You're not a judge. Because the criminal justice system, the whole idea of law enforcement is to make sure that people who victimize citizens of a country pay the price. If there's a death sentence in the country, those people are sentenced to death. If you steal something, the value of that item is determined and an appropriate sentence is given out. There should be no negotiation about it. But what Judge Madlanga was actually saying, and it is concerned to say, if you guys are the top cops, if you guys are supposed to be dealing and solving organized crime, if you guys are supposed to be collecting intelligence and make sure that the criminals don't get away with their crimes, if you guys are afraid of these criminals, You are scared, like you are scared. You're at the top of law enforcement, and you're worried about criminals. How did you get there? How did you get your promotion? How did you get your job? Because it indicates that you don't qualify for it. You don't qualify for it because you're supposed to hold the highest level of morality and ethics because you are law and you are the enforcer of the law. That's what it means. So now we have a situation in this country where law enforcement is diminished completely. Our criminal justice system is is being taken over by criminals, and these criminals have taken over the whole system because these criminals are now above the law. How are they above the law? Because the people who are meant to enforce the law are now afraid of the criminals. They're afraid of criminals. People that are supposed to be heading teams of investigators, teams of task teams to deal with murder and all sorts of criminal things are afraid to do it. It's like going to war and afraid to fire into the enemy's territory because you worry that the enemy is going to fire back. Like, what kind of nonsense is that? If you're going to war, it means you're going to shoot at the enemy. But that we're in a situation where we have a law enforcement situation, agencies and all the hawks and all these agencies afraid just to name them. So how are you going to arrest them? How are you going to prosecute them? How are you going to make sure that they never see the day of light again? The light of day, day of light. So what I'm saying to you is, what the judge is bringing up is, it's a sad state of affairs when people that are put in positions to protect us as citizens are afraid of the criminals. They've put themselves in positions where they are for sale. They've collected money from these criminals. They've worked with these criminals. They've exchanged information with these criminals. Now that the commission is on and information has to come out, they are afraid to confront the criminals because they work with them. So when these people are afraid of criminals, when these people cannot arrest these criminals and bring them to book, what chance do we stand as citizens? You're just a person who has a house and a car, and you take your kids to school, you go to the shops, you go to work. That's what your focus is. What chance do you have against these criminals that have taken over our law enforcement agencies? What chance do you have against these criminals when the head of the hawks, the head of crime intelligence, head of organized crime is scared to mention names? Anyway, those are my thoughts for the day. Enjoy the rest of the day. Until then, stay safe.